Be- Bezras Hashem. Um, okay. Bezras Hashem. Hi, Sheldon. Hi. Okay, Bezras Hashem. Today's daf is Masechta Baba Metzia Daf Ches. Okay, so the Gemara is going to discuss over here. We're going to start from Daf Zayin Amid Beis, right there by a third of the way, the last third of the daf. Okay, so Daf Zayin Amid Beis, and today's daf is Daf Ches. Amar Rab Loza. Rab Loza said, we discussed before in the Gemara is two people, a malva and a loiva, right? A borrower and a lender found a star. They found a document where the borrower says, they picked it up at the same time. The borrower says, it's my document. I paid this loan. The lender said, no, give it to me. He did not pay the loan. So what do you do with that? So the Brisa said you split the document in half. What do you mean you split a document? That you don't know who to give it to. So the borrower will have to pay 50% of what's written in the document. 50%. So Omar Rab Loza came up with a novel halacha. Machloikis. This word machloikis means you split. In other words, you split the star in that the loiva will only pay half the document, half the loan is b'sheshneim adukim betoifis ushneim bedukim betoirif. Both of them are holding part of the same star, the same side of the star. There are two parts to a star. There's one thing called the toirif. You see this word toirif? The toirif is the actual document, like you have when you purchase a house, right? So the contract has the heading on it, which says that he's purchasing the house. It has the borrower, the lender, and the date and time of the document. That's what that's called the toirif. Then you have the legalese, which is the toifis, all the other language that's part of a document, and then of a contract. But the toifis repeats it. It says the same thing, that there was a borrower, a lender with money, but it doesn't repeat the date. The date was written in the toirif. So the Gemara understands that the toirif is the more valuable part of the document. So when do you split a document equally if they're both holding on to the same part of the document? Either they're both holding on to the toifis, or they're both holding on to the toirif of the document. Aval echad oduk betoifis. If one of the people were holding on to the toifis of the star, the echad oduk betoirif, and the other one is holding on to the toirif of the star, zen noitel toifis, v'zen noitel toirif. Each one will take what belongs to him. Each one will take the one that's holding on to the toifis gets the toifis of the star, and the one holding on to the toirif will get the toirif of the star. Okay, it's again, you have two people picking up the star at the same time, the malva and the loiva. Now, who do you believe? So what we do is that the loiva has to pay 50% of what's in the star, but there's going to be a certain caveat. It depends who is holding on to this toirif, and we'll see what's the difference. Rabbi Yochanan says, "L'olam cholkim." You always split, no matter what, who picked up what. If each one picked up the toirif or the toifis, you always split. Or doesn't understand Rabbi Yochanan. Even if one is holding on the toifis and one is holding on the toirif, certainly Rabbi Yochanan would agree that the one that's holding on to the toirif keeps the toirif, and the one that's holding on the toifis keeps the toifis. Because Vatanya, we learned in a brisa that when two people are holding on to a talis, whatever you're holding on to is uncontested, belongs to you. So let's say you have a talis that two people are picking up at the same time. One is holding on to 4 feet of the talis, the other is holding on 3 feet of the talis. So each one keeps exactly what till where their hand reaches in the talis, and you only split what they're not holding on to. So therefore, if one is holding on to the toifis and one is holding on to the toirif, they should split. The one that's holding on to the toifis should keep it, and the one that's holding on to the toirif should keep that. So why does Rabbi Yochanan say we always split? So Gemara says, Rabbi Yochanan is talking about the koi torif bein mitzi. The torif is right in the middle of the document. So you split that. So nobody's holding on to the torif. If nobody's holding on to the tarif, you split the tarif. So then the Gemara's kasha is, remember, what's the novelty of Rabbi Yochanan? Of course, if nobody's holding on to it, then you split it. That the tarif is leaning towards one of them. In other words, there's two taifis on top, taifis on bottom, and the tarif, which is nobody's holding on to that, seems to be closer to one side. So Mao, the same, I would have thought, Amalei play Kachi. The one that's holding the tarif will say, split it down the middle, and the tarif always belongs to B. Kamash Malam, the Amalei, the other side will say, My chazet the plakta hachi. Who says you should split it that way? Play Kachi, split it the other way. So that takes care of that. Now, if the Gemara just doesn't understand, what's the difference if one is holding on to the tarif and one is holding on to the tarif? Either way, this loan is going to be paid 50%. So who cares? Why do I care that the tarif part of the get of the star is worth more than the taifis? The answer is a big difference. Who's holding on to the tarif? And that's what I'll speak it outside. If you're holding on to the tarif, you're also holding on to the date of the star. So if you give that to the lender, so then he can foreclose on properties that were sold after the loan, because he has a lien on all the properties from that date and onwards. So he could collect from what's called menuchasa mishubadim. So it's to his advantage if he's holding on to the tarif. But if he's holding on to the taifis, we said the taifis has the amount of the loan, but does not contain the date of the loan. So therefore, he will not be able to collect from menuchasa mishubadim. So that's why it's more valuable to hold the tarif. That's why there's a different who holds the tarif and who holds the taifis. The Amalei Rav Achmed Difla Ravina, Rab Lazar, the Amalei Noitel Taifis, Zen Noitel Taif. Whoever's holding onto the taifis keeps the taifis, and whoever's holding on the tarif keeps the tarif. Lomali, what's the difference? Are you going to just is the loan no loan, and you're just ripping the paper in half and giving each piece to one to the lender and one to the borrower? What are they going to do with a piece of paper? They're gonna stuff their wine bottle with it. I mean, what could you do with that? It means no, they're going to collect. We tear the document in half, but you could still collect from it. And he collects half the value of what the loan was, because you don't know. Maybe the loan was paid, maybe the loan was not paid, and you don't know who to believe. So therefore, you do a Salmonic wisdom here, and you say, okay, you only owe half the amount that's written in the document. But it makes a difference who's holding on to the tarif and who's holding on to the taifis. The star, the isbeis man, the one that has the star that has the date on it, kamashavi, it's worth more. Or the less beis man, kamashavi, how much is that worth? Yes, they're both worth the same. No, b'shar the isbeis man, a star that has a date on it, gavi mishade, you could collect from liened items. You put a lien on any property from that date on onwards. V'idach like gavi mishade. The other part, if you're holding on to the taifis, you're not going to collect from liened properties. Yavle heich the beini. You're going to only collect from what he has actual. So basically, what's going to happen is somebody who's holding on the tarif will get a little bit extra money, and the rest you split. Okay, let's go on to a new topic. When we always say in the Mishnah, remember the Mishnah, two people are holding on to a talis. Two people found a talis at the same time. What does that mean that you split it? Does that mean that you sell the talis and you split the money between the two finders? That's what you would think it means. So that's what the Gemara wants to say right now. If you're not going to say that you're always selling the item that was found and you're splitting the money, but rather you could say that you're just taking a scissor and cutting the item that was found and giving each one half, like, what Shlomo HaMelech and the baby, Shnayim Achsim Betalis, Hochinami, the Palik. How would you learn Pshat now Mishnah? Two people are holding on to a talis. Does that mean you split the talis in half and give each one half? Ha'af Sudur, you're destroying a talis. By putting a scissor down the middle and giving each one half, you're destroying the talis. So how do you explain our Mishnah? It must be, our Mishnah means to say that you actually sell the
Ticket.
and you
You sell it and the divide
divide,
half and half.
divide and divide. That's what the Gemara thought. The Gemara says 9. You could actually cut a talis in half. How could you cut a talis in half? You give it to kids. Hale kasha, this is nishver. We go to the Amir Aleph. The chazia lekatanim. You're right. You're going to have to split the talis in half and give it and make it to small talisim, as Rashi says, for small kids. Lebonim ketanim. Says the Gemara, the Rava said the same idea. If there was a gold atara, let's say on the talis, you don't give it to one person, you actually split it in half. You're going to split a gold talis in half. Kids don't wear gold talisim. So how are you going to cut the talis in such a way that you're going to have 2 small talisim with 2 small pieces of gold? Who's going to use that? You're not going to give it to a 7-year-old kid. And says the Gemara, that you're going to destroy it. So the Gemara says, Holoi kasha, that's not shver either. The chazia lebnei beluchem, that you could actually give it to a king. The son of a king, actually, for him, it's not so strange if he has a small talis made of gold that has pieces of gold. That's not shver. Says the Gemara, that we learned in the Mishnah. 2 people are riding on an animal. They both come out of the forest riding on an animal. Each one says, this is my animal. The other one says, it's my animal. They're both on the animal and they didn't push each other off. So the Mishnah says, you split the animal. What does it mean? How are you going to split an animal? Does a Mishnah mean you're going to split the animal and kill it? You're going to destroy the animal. That cannot be what the Mishnah, what we're trying to do. You're destroying an animal. Bishlama tahira, if it's a kosher animal, chazir lebasar. You could actually shech the animal, and then give each half of the animal to each side, to the people who are riding on the animal. Elatmeya, but if let's say it's a donkey, they're both riding on a tame animal. What does it mean? What does the Mishnah mean? Oh, split the animal, give half to you and half to you. You're going to destroy the animal, and it's not. You can't even eat it. It means to say ludome by behemoth meya taka. You're going to have to sell the animal and split. Achinami by star also ludome. It doesn't mean the star itself, the paper itself. You're going to cut the paper in half. No, you keep the paper as is, as a document that you collect on, but you split the money. In other words, you only collect half. Rabbi Bachoma said, Zois Aimeres, from our Mishnah, you can have a new Chiddush lahalacha. And Rabbi Bachoma is coming up with a fantastic Chiddush to halacha. There's a halacha called Zachin L'Adam Shloi B'fanav. In other words, that even though you didn't make me a shliach, I can take an item that belongs to me and say, I'm calling this item on your behalf. And now this item belongs to you because there's only upside there. There's an advantage there. Now you get whatever I was lifting. Let's say it was a cell phone, so it belongs to you. And even though you didn't make me a shliach, the fact that I verbally voiced and said lifting this so that you could be kained, I become your shliach even though you didn't make me a shliach. That's called zoichin la'adam shloi b'fanav. Okay, remember that zoichin la'adam shloi b'fanav. Okay, now there's another concept called, does that always work? Now, let's say I walk on Central Avenue and I find a watch, right? So I don't want the watch, I have a watch. I pick it up and I'm coining it on behalf of my friend, right? As a Metzia, I'm coining it on behalf of my friend. He didn't make me a shliach to do that for him, but you would think that that could work also. But the problem with that is that because you're doing that, you're causing a loss to somebody else. Wow, because the other people cannot find a watch. In other words, other people will not be able to acquire the watch for themselves. So would you say Zachin la'adam, even though you're going to cause somebody else a loss? So Rabbi Bachoma says, yes, you could do that. Hamagbiya Metzia lechavera. If again he finds something in the street and he lifts it up on behalf of his friend, even though his friend did not make him a shliach, kona chavera, the friend acquired the item. Now, the Isal Kedaitef, if you want to say loy kana chavera, it doesn't work. Our Mishnah wouldn't make sense. Our Mishnah says two people find an item, and two people find an item, and two people find an item, so you split it. Each one acquires half of the item, right? Two people acquire a talus, that each one has half the talus. Wait a second. But the fact is that you didn't acquire the whole talus. In order for you to acquire something, you have to hold the entire talus, and each one is not holding on to the entire talus. So what's happening is that one side is lifting and acquiring on behalf of his friend, with the friend lifting it to acquire on behalf of him. And therefore, that's why this whole thing could work in our Mishnah. Because if you're going to say it doesn't work, the other side that you don't lift up is like laying on the floor. And the other side is as if it's laying on the floor. Nobody should acquire it. And our Mishnah says each one does acquire it. It must be that each one is lifting it on behalf of his friend. If you lift a Metzia for your friend, even though you're causing a loss to other people, because by your lifting it up and acquiring on your behalf, on your friend, nobody now can find that Metzia. Kana chaver, your friend will acquire it. Omar Rava disagrees, and he says, "La'olam ein malach, I will always tell you, hamagbiya Metzia lechaverei loy kana chaver." If you lift the Metzia for your friend, it doesn't work. Again, I go on Central Avenue, I find a Metzia on the floor. If I lift it and say, I don't want the item, I'm lifting it up on behalf of my friend, it doesn't work. So why does it work in our Mishnah? Since I want to acquire some part of it for myself, therefore I can acquire it on behalf of my friend. So there's a concept over here like this, that because I'm not totally giving it over to my friend, part of the talus belongs to me. So since I'm saying that part of the talus should belong to me, so therefore I can be zoicha also for my friend. Now, how do you know that you say such a migoy? Teida, we're going to say like this, a proof. Let's say a man says to his messenger, say ugnoivli, go steal something for me. V'gonav, and he goes steal. So Reuven told Shimon, go steal something on my behalf. It doesn't work. Potter. Why? Because ein shliach ledvar avera. I can't make a messenger to do an avera. So that doesn't work. For certainly shlichus like that doesn't work. V'shutafin shegavru. But let's say two people break into a house and start lifting a heavy couch out of the house. Each one can't do it by themselves. If they both do it, now chayavin, they're both chayav kefil. Now, how does that work? Well, how does that work? L'chayra, each one has to make the other one a shliach, because he can't lift the couch himself, so he's making a shliach, his partner in crime, as his shliach, and the other one is making him a shliach. But you just said ein shliach l'davar avera, because so then why are they chayav kefil? Why do they consider to be chayav kefil? They're both ganavim. Because we say this concept, since you're acquiring part of something, so therefore you could be acquired on your behalf, for your friend. So so you'll say that in our Mishnah, that because each one is getting part of the talus, therefore he can acquire it on behalf of his friend. But if he was totally a Metzia that he finds on the street and saying it totally belongs to my friend, Rava says it would not work. Okay? So that's a basic machlokes between Rami bar Chama and Rava. If you find a lost item on the street of Central Avenue, and you say, I'm picking it up on behalf of my friend, Rami bar Chama says it works, and he has a proof from our Mishnah, and Rava says it doesn't work. And our Mishnah is a little different. And the Gemara just expands on Rava. Rava said, Hasha the Amrit down that you said, Amina Migoy, you say this concept of Migoy, Cherish upikeach should be a Metzia. If one of them is a Cherish, so who's not mentally there, and a Pikeach, a normal person, they picked up a Metzia. So really, a Cherish is kind of something he midrabanan, midraisa, he can't be kind of anything. He's not mentally capable. But mitoich shekana cherish, kana bekerach. Rava, the Gemara wants to extend that if two people are koinit, the cherish and bekeach, since the cherish will get half the talis, the normal person will also get half the talis. So the Gemara doesn't understand that. Bishlam cherish kana, the cherish will get half the talis. The komagbele ben das, because who's being acquiring the talis on his behalf? A normal person. Ela pikeach b'maikana, but why should the pikeach get half the talis? The cherish has to acquire half the talis on the pikech's half, and the cherish is somebody who cannot acquire anything midaraisa. Ela, you have to say like this: cherish kana, pikech lekana. You're right. The cherish will get his half of the talis, and pikech will not get any part of the talis. Umay migoy. What does it mean, migoy? What do we mean by migoy? Migoy the shnei cherishim al mekani. Since if there were two cherishim that picked up the talis, each one would get calf. Hainame kani. So if a cherish and pikeach picked up the talis, the pikeach won't get any part of the talis. The cherish will get part of the talis. So the Gemara says, Haimai. How can you compare two cherishim to a cherish and a pikeach? When you say that that works only if you're collecting on behalf of a friend. Hi, I daited the day komagbele ihu loikani lachrina makrini. Since he is picking the pikeach is picking it up because he wants to keep the whole thing, right? You're telling me he doesn't get to keep it, so he's backing it to somebody else. He's picking it up to try to acquire the entire talis. Ella, you have to say it this way. Because the Bikeach didn't acquire anything, he wasn't makna his other half to the Cherish. Loi kana Cherish. It wouldn't work for the Cherish. Are you going to say, why by two Cherishin, if they both pick up talis, they get to keep half? Hasam, it's only midrabanan anyway. Hasam takni lerabanan, the le'aslin suye. There, the Rabbanan said both cherish can keep half. Why? Because they're not gonna. We don't want these two cherishim to have an argument. Hacha, but over here, meima ama pikeach lakana ana akni. If the pikeach is not going to acquire anything, the cherish should acquire something. So therefore, again, the Gemara just concluded. Our Mishnah said two people pick up a talis. Each one splits half. It's only if they're two normal people, or they're two cherishim. But if one is a pikeach and one is a cherish, then we say nobody gets any part of the talis. Amalei Ravacha b'drei Adal Ravashi. Do you could do Rabbi Melchama Hecha? Where did Rabbi Melchama get this idea of Hamagbia Metzia lechavera kanal chavera? What extra word in the Mishnah did he come up with that conclusion? So the Gemara says a few possibilities. Ine memoration from the beginning of the Mishnah. Shnayim oichsim metalis. What do you mean? Each one is not picking up on behalf of somebody else. He's not picking it up. Two people picking up the talis. Each one is not picking it up for his friend. Hasam hai kama kulishli vano agbakula. He's basically saying, I want the whole talis, and I picked up the whole talis. V'hayam, and the other one is saying, kulishli, the whole talis belongs to me. Vano agbasakula, and I lifted the whole talis. So that's not where Rabbi Bachama got his halacha. What do you need that extra case? Gemara Mishnah added extra words because it added those extra words. That's why you learn this idea. Says the Gemara, that's not extra words. We already said that the first case of the Mishnah is talking about you finding two things. The two people have an argument of who found the item. And the Sefer of the Mishnah is talking about the two people had an argument who bought the item. Ella Sefer from the end of the Mishnah, so that's an extra case of the Mishnah, where one guy will say get to keep a quarter of the item, and the other person will get 3/4 of the talis. Why does the Mishnah have to give you that extra case? So that's from that extra case you learn that concept. So the Gemara, my the Metzia, maybe it's that also is talking about memcha memcha. What's the novelty? I would think that in the case where one says half belongs to me and the one says the whole thing belongs to me. So
Yeah.
swear, he's being a nice guy. So if he just says chetzishli and the other party is saying the whole thing belongs to me, we should allow him to take his half, his quarter, vilipata, and not have to swear. So that's what the Mishnah is teaching you. He understands business and he's trying to make a trick to get out of swearing. Savar, he thinks to himself, if I would say the whole house belongs to me, by I would have to swear. I'm going to say the following. I'm going to say just half belongs to me, and the other guys are going to say the whole thing belongs to me. They have a commission of Aveda uipata. From this part of the Mishnah, the Mishnah gives you a third example of two people riding an animal. Why did the Mishnah have to give you this case? The fact that the Mishnah goes on and gives you numerous examples. Says the Gemara, maybe the Mishnah is teaching you another novelty. By riding an animal, it's like you're acquiring the animal. I wouldn't know. I would think that the only way to acquire an animal is only if you hold the reins. The Mishnah is teaching you a side halacha that if you ride an animal, you also acquire the animal. Allah says the Gemara Metzia. Well, this will end. If they both agree that they found it at the same time, or there was Aiden that saw two people lift the talis at the same time, then there's no reason to have a shvuah there. Cholkin, they split it b'lay shvuah. B'mai, what's that talking about? If the Adim saw that both pay money at the same time for the same item, of course, of course you split it, because that's no novelty there. Metzia. It's talking about a Metzia. They're both finding the item at the same time, and they're both lifting it at the same time, and they both agree that the other one lifted it also at the same time, and there are Adim saying that. And the fact that one guy is lifting his half to give to the other side, and the other one is lifting that half to give to his side, so we see that you can lift the Metzia in the central avenue and totally coin it for behalf of your friend. The Rava says from our Mishnah is no proof, because because you're getting a piece of the talis, therefore you can gift it off to your friend. But totally lifting a Metzia off the ground and gifting it to your friend, that wouldn't work. Why? Because now nobody else can find that Metzia. So that is the basic machlekes between Rami Bachama and Rava on one of the harder daf in Bava Metzia. Okay.
Where did you leave off?
Off at the bottom of Chesam at Aleph, Hayishnayim Roichvin on the bottom. I'll put a recording for the last part of the daf, but I didn't want to go.
Good Shabbos.
Thank you. Have a good night. Good Shabbos. Good Shabbos.